Okay, I think we can get started. Thank you very much again for everybody to be available today to join today's webinar. We would like to thank our partners today, which are the Slovenian Chinese Business Council and Extenda for their contribution to today's session. And I would like to leave the floor right now to Ziga, who is the president of the Slovenian Chinese Business Council. Ziga, the floor is yours.
Laura, thank you so much. Greetings to all participants. We are very happy that we have started doing the cooperation with EU SME Center. I'm sure that this is something unique, combining not only Europe, but on the other hand also that we combine the China and Europe. So I'm strongly believing that this is a great opportunity for everyone, because the startup is an important area where the China and Europe can cooperate. We are putting Slovenian Chinese Business Council to the Chamber of Commerce, which brings us, to the field where startup is also cooperating really well with the industry. And I'm sure that this workshop today will bring many great insights for different participants. This is not the only activity, so I'm always welcoming different potential members to join. And, saying about Slovenia and China, I'm always using the story that if you look at the map of both countries, you see a big rooster and small Slovenia, which is a chicken. So I'm always saying that China and Slovenia are national partners. And, I'm really happy that many Slovenian startups and people who are involved in cooperating with startup and China got involved today. I'm wishing all of you a great workshop. And I'm sure that this is just the beginning of a great cooperation with all partners who are involved today. And I would just like to say, in the name of Slovenian Chinese Business Club, a big thank you for everyone involved.
Thank you very much, Ziga. The USME Center is also thrilled to have the Slovenian Chinese Business Council as partner. And now I would like to leave the floor to Mr. Manuel Leon, who is the director of the Shanghai office of Extenda, which is the trade and investment agency of Andalusia region in Spain. Manuel, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Laura, Siga, Jelte, Alvaro. Good morning, everyone. First of all, sorry for my video freezing, perhaps because of some software incompatibility this morning. I would like to start by thanking the USME Center and the Slovenian Chinese Business Forum for their cooperation in organizing this webinar today. As Laura said, I represent Extenda China, which is the trade and investment promotion agency of Andalusia region from Spain. In the last 20 years, we have been present in China. Andalusia has become the second largest exporter region from Spain into China, which annually represents about 1.2 thousand million euros of exports to China, and being our companies mainly in the business such as minerals, food and beverages, education, and so on. In the last decade, we have experienced the emergence of the technological-based startup entrepreneurs in our region, mainly in mobility and open software industries, and the establishment of several accelerators and public programs such as Andalusia Open Future or Programa Minerva. And also our regional government has put in place a set of initiatives such as Startup Andalusia Roadshow competition or even venture capital funds to further incentivize the consolidation of these projects. Our startups are still mainly in the seed and growth stage, and although so far we have not received much demand of assistance from them to enter the Chinese market or to find Chinese investment, we consider that this is a very good opportunity, not only for our entrepreneurs to gain knowledge for market access, but also for our institutions and policymakers to benchmark the innovation ecosystem in China, which I believe is one of the most successful globally nowadays. So we are excited to listen to the experts and with experience on the ground, such as Jelte and Alvaro, And we hope this to be an initial step for our entrepreneurs in China. So nothing else from my side. Thank you very much. And we are all ears.
Thank you very much, Manuel. Before I leave the floor to Álvaro and Yelte, who are our key speakers today, I would like to spend a few minutes presenting the USME Center for those who haven't heard about us before. For those who already know about us, please bear with me. I will shut up very, very fast, and I will leave it to the speakers today. About the ESME Center, we are an EU-founded initiative that started in 2010 with the purpose of helping European SMEs access the Chinese market. We are 5 implementing partners behind this initiative. You can actually see the names and our logos at the bottom of the page. We are 4 chambers of commerce and 1 business council. All of them are based in China, except Eurochambre, which is the partner who is implementing all the activities in Europe. We have an office in Beijing, where actually most of our colleagues are, except myself, that I'm in Europe working and collaborating with partners such as Stenda or the Slovenian Chinese Business Forum. In terms of services, we have 4 blocks of services that you can see in the screen right now. Very briefly, the first one is the Knowledge Center. This is an online library where you can find market reports, guidelines, case studies, and business articles on different China-related topics. Some of them are very transversal, for instance, cross-border e-commerce or ways to enter the Chinese market. And some others are really sector-specific, for instance, the green tech, food and beverage, or healthcare. I forgot to mention that all of the services we are offering are free of charge for European SMEs and business support organizations. You only need to be registered for statistical purposes. We want to know who is behind those downloads or the usage of the website in order to create additional content of your interest and use. The second block includes 2 services. The first one is advice, is the self-diagnosis tool. This is an online quiz. In fact, there are 5 online quizzes, a general one and 4 specific ones that allows you to understand your level of readiness towards the market. There is a learning process. First, along the way, when you are actually answering the questions of the quiz, you can really understand if you are doing it right or you are missing some steps. And at the end, when you finish or you complete the tool, where actually there are some recommendations and suggestions on where or how to improve the existing knowledge. The second service within the Advice Center is Ask the Expert. This is a one-to-one confidential and complimentary consultation on China-related topics. Here you can ask anything about business development, HR, China corporate law, whatever you want. Our experts usually reply to your questions within 2 or 3 working days. Again, this is all complimentary. The third block is the training center. Here we try to plug the knowledge and skill gaps of the SMEs that are entering China. And today is a very good example of what we are doing here in Europe. Unfortunately, due to the COVID, we have shifted all the activities to the online format, but there is an advantage, and is that today we can have experts that are based in Beijing, whilst normally it would be very difficult to bring them to a face-to-face event that we used to organize. In any case, once we go back to the normality, once we are over with the COVID, we will start organizing presential events as well, and we welcome you all to participate. Last but not least, we also have an advocacy platform. Here we have 2 main goals. One is to provide up-to-date information on the regulatory and economic environment in China, so that SMEs are fully aware of the restrictions or the regulation and they can adjust accordingly. But we also here, we try to give voice to the concerns and the request of the European SMEs that operate in China or want to operate. If you want additional information, you can access our website and contact our advocacy team. Now, a little bit of what's on the pipeline in the coming days. The third event is what is happening today, but we are organizing a B2B matchmaking event on September 24 related to the gaming and e-sport industry with some side activities and webinars. We are also organizing training on the organic and food beverage sector in China on September 30th, a conference on best practice of European SMEs exporting to China on October 14th. And here we will not have experts telling you how to do this or how to import that in China. We will have real companies, real SMEs who have been dealing with the Chinese crisis, and they are going to share how they managed to overcome it, and in some cases how to actually be successful and create some side businesses that help them to continue operating and even increase their revenue. And last but not least, I also would like to invite everybody to our flagship event, the Understanding China training program. This is a 2-half-day conference which will take place between the 21st and the 22nd of October. We will be covering issues such as the impact of COVID-19 on mobility, how the consumers' trends have changed and shifted in the past few years. But we will also be talking about digitalization, supply chain, and other related topics. The registration is already opened. We invite you to look into our website and register as soon as possible. And before we get into the experts, just a technical reminder, we would like to encourage everybody to submit questions. We want this to make this very dynamic and take advantage of the knowledge of Yelte and Alvaro to clarify any questions you might have. This is a great platform and a great opportunity to exchange thoughts. But please use the Q&A button so that we can actually coordinate and organize the Q&A session that will take place at the end of the conference. For any other related matter, or to greet people or just to comment on something, you can use the chat and we will just keep an eye on it. A little bit about our experts today, Yelte and Alvaro. Yelte is the co-founder and CEO at Founders Lay. He's going to share additional information of what he's doing. He's a startup expert, and he does a lot of mentoring and advising in this direction. And here you can find his contact details. Also about Alvaro, Alvaro is an entrepreneur himself. He actually has his own startup called Acceso. You're going to learn a little bit more about Acceso during this presentation. And if you look into Alvaro's t-shirt, you will find also his logo. And here you have also his email address and the website. And now, without further ado, I leave the floor to today's speaker. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so that Yelte can move on. Please, the floor is yours, guys.
Thank you so much, Laura, and thank you so much for having us. Alvaro, also, you want to say a short hi to the audience?
Yeah, thank you, USME Center and the other organizations for organizing and making this possible. I hope that is something we all can learn here today.
Yeah, so how we're going to structure today is, while the slide is loading, is we will have blocks of content that dive into the startup realm of China and how you can enter it. And the other part is a bit about if you're not a startup, you're a mid-sized or larger company and you want to enter the market, there's also some content about this. But we also have an exchange. So Alvaro, the founder and CEO of Acceso, will always be the devil's advocate. He will sometimes come in and say something like, Yelte, what you said is wrong, or this one you forgot to mention, something like this. Because Alvaro and I, we know each other now for a couple of years, and we are both entrepreneurs. I just joined actually as an entrepreneur a bit later myself. He has been doing this for a while longer and has been more successful than I have been. So we're exchanging a bit the content. And at the end of every session, we will have a short discourse. And please write your questions in the Q&A that we can stop at any time and dive into what you have to ask, right? We will have also a case study about Acceso and Alvaro at the end, where we go deeper into why he actually started his own business, what went well, what didn't. Maybe we'll share a few things on the way. Anything else you want to share, Alvaro? All good. All good. Cool. So what I usually like to do, also when I join webinars myself, is knowing like, why are these people talking here? Of course, you trust the organizations that they pick the right people, but I wanted to share a bit why I am here today and also what kind of questions you can ask me. So I have been involved in the last 5 years heavily in the startup ecosystem in China and also in APAC. What you currently see here is on the left, building blocks of a startup ecosystem. I have a slide that goes way more deeper into this. What is needed to actually create a startup ecosystem and what I have covered with my roles in the past in that regard. So I'm a founder myself of Founders Lair. I'm doing this for 1.5 years now, and since June full-time. I've been working as a first foreign employee at a state-owned enterprise at Zhongguancun Chang'e, which is like the a landmark for entrepreneurship and innovation in Beijing, which is like in Zhongguancun, the Silicon Valley of Beijing. And there I've been in charge of corporate innovation, helping corporates to collaborate with startups, but also for international lending programs. So I also covered in that regard corporate innovation. I worked there with Daimler, Volkswagen, Hitachi, Walmart, and so on and so on. Government related, I also lobbied a lot with government organizations, may it be city government or regional government, on landing programs and initiatives to help international startups to make it easier to land here. Also related to Innowe. Service providers, so that's all this incubation. So I also helped in terms of if you want to register your company, how are you setting up your bank account? How do you get visa for your employees and stuff like this? So this was also part of my role. I was not too actively involved in that, but my department did that. And something that I've been doing very actively for 4 years was community building for Startup Grind, which is the largest independent community organization in the world. And I was in charge first of the Beijing chapter. Startup Grind has 600 chapters worldwide in 124 countries. And at one point I took over also China, managed their 35 cities in China. So I know the market quite well in that regard. And later I also took over as APAC director, managing every country in between Azerbaijan up to New Zealand. So if you have any questions in that regard about Indonesia, Philippines, Japan, Korea, you can also feel free to ask me. Recently, I've joined more and more programs like German Accelerator, which is a German government initiative to bring growth stage startups A, B, and later stage to China. And I help them there to matchmake with the right people. Also, I'm a mentor at Plug and Play for Korean government, for Blockchain Accelerator in Korea, and I'm part of the Innovation Council for Walmart Food Innovation Pipeline. And the only two things that I've not done, I'm not an investor yet, and I did not work at a university. These are the only 2 blocks at a startup ecosystem that I've not tapped myself into. Now you know like where I'm coming from. Before that, I used to be a strategy consultant, helping mid-sized companies to enter the Chinese market. Yeah, so that's my background. So these are the building blocks that we are going to talk about today. First, we start about the ecosystem, having an overview, which is quite hard because China's big, but we try to do that. Okay, so first one is, if you want to get an overview of entire China, just imagine that this is a deep dive into 30 countries. So you have the European Union, for example, you have so many countries. If you want to dive into France, if you want to dive into Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Italy, each of these ecosystems is complex. And that is the same with China. It's not, there is Beijing and Shenzhen. There are so many parts of China that are very diverse, very different focuses. And you have to keep that in mind, that China is not this homogeneous kind of country where you can say everything is the same. Every state has the economic power of countries in Europe or in the world. So for example, we have here, Finland has the economic power of Dalian, or Shenzhen has that of Sweden. And if we really dive into every ecosystem of China, we would have to do this for a week. But I try to do that on a more shallow level. If you have any in-depth questions about that, I'm also more than happy to dive into that. One thing that I want to say up front is, if you want to enter China, you need to have a clear China strategy. You need to understand how you want to enter. Do not just go and say, hey, the opportunity is great. There are a lot of people. There's a lot of demand for what I need. That's not a good strategy. you need to think deeper about that. And also the EU SME Center helps you with developing something stronger. You need a strong commitment. One mistake that I see very often happening from European and international startups is, I want to enter China through only distribution, or I will do something like maybe have some person there. If you want to do that, you need to be all in. There is no way around. China is nothing that you just do on the side. You need a diversified approach for each region. That's important. So if you want to enter Beijing, you enter Beijing. That's not China. So every city, every region, you need to have a different approach. And at one point, you need a Chinese team. Do not think you can do that by yourself. If you really attempt to like enter the Chinese market and cover it. Just some simple things on the beginning. By the way, Alvaro, this is again something where you can say something in between saying like, Jelte, that's nonsense what you say. I hope it's not. Yeah, and then of course China is big, and sometimes people think, okay, I'm going to Shanghai or I'm going to Shenzhen. But if you think about, you're not just entering a 20 million people city, you are entering cluster regions. These regions usually have 100, 150 million people that you can enter, depending if you're in B2C or B2B, but the markets are vast. And sometimes it's worth looking beyond the first-tier cities and also looking into other cluster regions, which still have 100 million people, especially if you look there into Chengdu or Chongqing, if you're somewhat related to Belt and Road, something you should not put aside, which can also be very interesting. So here's something about the startup ecosystem globally. This is from Startup Genome, the largest startup ecosystem report in the world. I've been gathering data for them for 3 years as China expert, and I've also helped them to interview the entrepreneurs here. And China has actually 2 cities in the top 20 list, which are Beijing and Shanghai. They are not so different actually to all the other cities. So from Europe, there are London, what else do we have? Amsterdam, Paris, Berlin, and that's it, right? But if you compare right now these ecosystems, Beijing and Shanghai differentiate in one aspect heavily from the others, which is connectedness. And this is something that you need to be aware of. Connectedness means you interview the founders and you ask them, who do you know as other founders? And if you ask a Chinese founder, they will say, I know other Chinese founders. They will not say, I know a German founder or a French founder. That is connectedness. So it measures how international connected are the founders to other regions. If you're in Amsterdam and you ask the founders, who do you know? They will say, I know someone from Germany, I know someone from Italy, because the market is so small, right? So China is just so vast. All the Chinese founders are connected to Chinese founders. And the amount of foreign entrepreneurs being in China and doing business in China is still nearly non-existent in a statistical scale. Be aware of that. That also means you need to learn how to be localized and to be connected to local, to international communities that you find them, that you find entrepreneurs like Alvaro or myself in certain cities. The rest is not so different. So you get a lot of money in terms of funding, good access in those cities. I have more about that. And let's dive deeper into this. So usually how you measure startup ecosystems is the output. You look at how many unicorns did they produce, or how many Aaron startups are there. And of course, you're all aware that China is not at the bottom of the list, they're leading it. So you have currently 227 unicorns that are Chinese unicorns. And that is 37%. That's just, I think now they should have overtaken the US with 38%, because in China, it takes around 2 years to create a unicorn. And in the US, it's 2.5 years to produce a unicorn. So just by math, sooner or later, China will overtake this. I have here Germany in there because, yeah, I'm from Germany originally. Germany has 12 unicorns. I think there are now 14 if I read the news from the last couple of days, but doesn't matter so much. So 12 is not much in China terms. And rest of the world is 21%. So there's a lot happening in China, a lot of output. And a lot of people also ask me about, okay, where do they come from? What industries do they belong to? And most important thing that you should take away from this pie chart is the top ones are e-commerce, automotive, and AI. However, be careful about this, because if you look at the startups, the unicorns in China, they are usually like krakens. What that means is they are not in one industry only. They usually go and develop super apps or super ecosystems where they start maybe with e-commerce, but then they start diving into entertainment, into healthcare, into sports, into any other region. So all of these unicorns, they start with e-commerce and are accounted for that, but they create these super apps around themselves. So that is something you should be aware of. That's very unique for China, not so common in other parts of the world. So if you have a Spotify or something like this, they will stick to what they are good at. But in China, they develop these different business arms. Okay, and this one is probably important for all of you, because you might think, I don't want to come to China. I'm just listening to this to figure out what China is, and maybe I will come or not. But if you look at this chart, it hasn't started too far along that Chinese unicorns came to be. So it only started in 2014, and it increased every year. And what happens now is 70% of these unicorn companies do not want to stay only in China. They want to conquer the world. And they are unicorns in any industry that all of you cover. So sooner or later, they will say, I want to come to Europe, or I want to come to the US. So you will be confronted with something that you might not understand in the next 2 or 3 years or 5 years, with a speed that you're not familiar with. And this is a key takeaway, where maybe China is something that you should have on your radar to just learn how things are done here, that you can be more competitive in the future. Be aware of that, because 70% of them wants to come to abroad. Okay, this one is the supply system. Again, it's very hard to do that for entire China. I tried to break that down into simple parts, first-tier cities, and how the Chinese government calls them new first-tier cities. New first-tier cities are second-tier cities, but they are pushed heavily through the government and government budget to become on a similar level like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, or Guangzhou, which are the first-tier cities. But that's an official terminology they are currently using. It's new first-tier cities. And what you see here, most foreign entrepreneurs usually eye on Beijing or Shanghai, few on Shenzhen, and I would say the least know about Guangzhou. But I think all of them have the benefits. I have a very simple comparison of these ecosystems on the left in terms of market readiness for startups. Of course, the first-tier cities are ready. So it's no difference if you come to, I would say, New York, London, or Beijing. You get funding here, you get incubators here, you get corporates here. Everything is at your fingertip. All of them know how to deal with startups. However, it's local. So it's not like New York, you can go and speak to everyone in English, right? But that's a different topic. New first-tier cities are a little bit less advanced in that regard. Especially if you look at Hangzhou, I would say Hangzhou is more advanced than most of the first-tier cities actually right now, because they have a very digital and very international friendly approach. And in terms of resources, if you are looking for grants or anything from the government, it's very hard to get that in first-tier cities, because it's very competitive. Beijing will not easily give you a lot of money unless you're like first class of Europe, top 10 in IoT or something like this. Then they will put out the big money. But getting grants is easier in new first-tier cities, so the smaller ones. Ecosystem maturity is similar to market readiness. Talent access, that's one problem. So you could get very good grants and resources in, let's say, Haikou, which is in Hainan, or in, let's say, Ningbo or Suzhou or Nanjing. But if you need talent, it's very hard to get that. And if you want talent, you should stick to first-tier cities. However, be aware that the annual salary in first-tier cities is crazy. You pay for a really good developer around 50 to 70,000 RMB, depending on the seniority, which is like 10,000 euros per month. And it's very competitive because all of the top unicorns, they have their eyes already on the top performance from universities first day they start, and you're competing with them. So getting these top technology talents is very tough in these markets. Funding, I would say it's easy if you're here and if you're really committed to the market. Getting money in the Chinese market is, well, not harder or easier than in any other market, but money is available. And if you know how to localize, you can successfully pitch. And Ivor was one example for that, but he will share more about that a bit later.
Just one comment for the previous slide, Jelte. Last week, I remember I was having lunch with another startup. Can you put the previous slide?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, for example, if you get the money, for example, in Suzhou, I was talking with one entrepreneur, so he could get around 1 to 3 million renminbi, so he can push his business. But there are some consequences. For example, in exchange of that, you have to have your company registered in Suzhou. By the way, Suzhou is just on top of Shanghai. I don't know if you guys can see it. You can see Shanghai, then Suzhou. So that area, that city, that region, they are trying now to bring talent. So here there is opportunity for foreigners as well, foreign business, even SMEs as well. So they want you to bring the address, register there, and then can give you the money. Now also, so it's not sound so easy. They told me that also they require that in your company balance, you need to have a certain minimum of amount of money. Then they can give you the next amount. And that was just last week. Somebody was telling me about the conditions. So just to let you know, guys, there are some conditions in order to get the money. It's not that straightforward.
Yeah, I will dive a bit deeper into grants and things like this in a later part of the slides, because I also have some things that are relevant to in that regard. Also, one thing that Ivor will mention, and I think I do not mention that later, so I mention it here, is about your company registration. And if you're a technology startup, it matters what you have in the front. So both Akadu and my own company have Beijing in front, which means Beijing technology company. That is a high standard. If you go and you do business in entire China, people take you more serious because you have a Beijing in front. You're a first-tier city. If you have Chengdu and you go to Beijing, people will think less of you. This is something that you have to fight for if you're in certain industries, and it's harder to do that. Be aware of that. It's not always the case, but it's something that you should know if you register a company in Suzhou or other new first-tier cities. Yeah, so this is one of the first exchanges I've already started, which is nice. But if you see these slides about China is big, China is diverse, how do you usually help other founders that approach you and say like, hey, where should I go? How should I read the market? Anything that you want to add to that?
So my case, okay. I think that, for example, if someone, I'm not sure about the audience, if there's anyone that considering to start up, to start the startup, but in my case, maybe I can tell a little bit about me. So then I'm going to explain a little bit about the startup ecosystem. So hello everyone, I'm Alvaro from Mercado. We are a live translation technology company offering live translation technologies for virtual platforms and also for organizations. And I started like 3 years ago in Beijing. No, I was in a university studying an MBA, and I couldn't understand the professors talking in Chinese. So I built myself my own prototype. So the professor can talk in Chinese, then I can understand and read in Spanish. I did it from Chinese to Spanish, no? From like voice recognition and translation. And with that, I started to participate in some competitions. That is one good thing about the startup ecosystem here in Beijing. There are tons of startup competitions. So with that prototype, it was a very simple prototype, but I participated in many competitions from the university where I was studying and also from the city itself. I got in some of them to the final, and I think in one competition, actually it's the one that Laura have put in the first slide, where they show me with a microphone. Actually, in that competition, I got the second prize, and it was sponsored by Facebook. So that was kind of my first moment I put one step officially into the startup world, because in that competition, I got money from Facebook, and also in that competition, there were investors. So it was the first time that some investors approached me, and not only investors, also incubators. So I think this is another thing that founders need to maybe keep an eye on. No, like there are many incubators in Beijing that they are willing to provide you resources to help you incubate you, to help you to grow, and that is what happened to me. Jette, can I go more deep, or you think that is enough?
I can be agile to whatever you want to say. Okay.
Okay, so yeah, it's time to keep to the story. I'm just a guy that have a prototype, got some money, and now got investors saying that sounds interesting, your business plan sucks, but seems there is a potential market there. And then there are also incubators. Alvaro, don't talk with investors yet. We incubate you, we train you, we help you, we give you some advice, we can polish you pitch deck, and then maybe you can fundraise. So I choose the option of incubators, because with investors, later we're going to go more deep how I fundraise, but incubators here in China, they are really willing to help. Well, that's the goal, no? To get the startups and to help them. So that's how I entered into one incubator in Beijing, and the incubator I like a lot because they give me mentors. They give me one-on-one sessions with lawyers, with consultant companies, so many different things that when you start a business, no, you need to consider, no, accounting, the invoice, the fundraising, but also other things. So this incubator gave me a lot of one-on-one sessions. So I was getting this free advice to understand better the whole of a company. And at the same time, the incubator also organized a lot of road shows. No, many competitions where I can pitch and I can have in front of me also investors. So that was how was my beginning as a startup founder in Beijing, is getting into an incubator, getting the advice, and then of course also developing my market. At the end, that's the most important thing. No matter how well connected you are, if your product sucks, then it's difficult to grow. So yeah, is that good? For now?
Did it ever come to your mind to change direction and go to Nanjing or Shanghai? Why did you choose Beijing, and why did you stick to Beijing?
Oh, so I choose Beijing because I was studying, it's called Tsinghua University. It's a good university in Beijing with good resources. And the incubator there, they offer me to help, and it was free. Since that incubator, for all the students in the campus, they give them free office. So suddenly I had an office up to 5 seats. So if I had to grow my team, and I had all these resources that I explained. Of course, there were, when I joined some competitions, there is always someone from Shanghai, from Shenzhen telling you, hey, Alvaro, why don't you move your address to Shanghai? We also can give you this and that. But I liked to be in the university because also the university was a good place to test my prototype. They already knew me as well. I started there. I was one student there. So because of this reason, I stick into Beijing.
Yeah, this is also one thing that coming back to the funding story, and for those of you in the audience who are thinking about getting to China and getting funding, you can get local Chinese investors, you can get international investors that are operating here. However, all of them want you to be China savvy. They want you to be ready to have done your homework. So what Alvaro now says about knowing about how to issue an invoice, how to do accounting, how to set up a contract and things like this. These are things that all the investors expect you to do. Nobody, and that is a quite common term, wants to hold your hand. So they want people who get this knowledge by themselves. And once they see you are 100% committed to the market and have learned the basics, then they start supporting you with the big money, not before. I have some more slides about that later. Yeah, but I mean, I think if Alvaro, you would have now the choice, would you still stick to Beijing, or do you see anything in the market happening where you say, hey, I would maybe go to Nanjing or Hangzhou or Shanghai?
I think it's what you said. I think maybe I never got a grant from the government. Like I see the government giving 1 million, 2 million to other companies just to help them. They want 2 million renminbi. How much is that in euros? 100,000 euros? 100,000 euros without equity. They don't ask equity in exchange. They don't ask anything, just to support. I think that's great. It's like your first round of investment without giving equity. That's great. So in Beijing, I couldn't. I tried, but as Jelte said, I am not a PhD with 10 years and with a Nobel Prize. So it's very difficult to get that. Or I'm not Elon Musk yet. So that's why I always had to do it by myself. But I think I would consider, because now that I've been more into the startup ecosystem, I can see some people going to other places and get the grant. But of course, as you said, that was the talent. Now you need to recruit people there. No? And now you need to be registered there. Sometimes they ask you to be there. So there are many conditions, but it could be an option, because suddenly you get 100,000 euros to start the business, right? If you have an online business, internet business, then it shouldn't matter where you are. Yeah, could be an option.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Alvaro. Let's go forward. So we're in China. We look a bit at incubators, accelerators, co-working spaces, high-tech zones, and tech parks. I have some slides prepared there, but I try to walk through that quickly, because in general, again, as I mentioned, China is vast. Every city has like 20 million or something people. And what I have here is the example of what the Beijing startup ecosystem looks like, the most visible players in the market, and the blocks of an ecosystem that I mentioned right in the beginning. So you have the mandatory building blocks of a startup ecosystem are investors. They give you money, of course, incubators and accelerators, corporate innovators. So if you want to work with Volkswagen and build a prototype, you should know where to find them. Governments, community organizations, service providers, and universities. Why is there now this pink triangle? In China, and that's something that I've learned over the last couple of years, there is a minimum validation point of entry that international startups need to have. If you do not have that, it's very hard to get actually into an ecosystem in any. And what I think the minimum are incubators and accelerators. So I've all had access to Tsinghua XLab, which is also a university in that regard. But without that, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to start. He wouldn't have gotten the resources, the knowledge, the mentorship, and so on and so on. Governments. I truly believe there is no way around the government. I have another proportion of slides about that. You can do without, but you will not grow without. You need to understand that, but you need to be aware when you need to know about them. A lot of people start with the government and they realize it's not going anywhere. That's the wrong approach. I have some slides about when you start doing that and when not. Community organizations, that is mostly important for any international company or a startup that wants to enter here. It's not so relevant for Chinese companies, actually. But if you think about you are a startup from Spain and you want to enter the Chinese market, how do you do that? You need friends. You need people you trust. You need to find your ways to hire people. How do you do that? You communicate to other people and say, like, where can I hire a general manager? Where can I hire an accountant? Where can I go to events to learn about stuff? That is what you all find in communities. And there are very active international communities and local communities that you can tap into. And I think if you are strong in these three, you're well prepared for China. If you are now a well-funded startup, so you're A round or B round in Europe by an investor, you should have a strong reach towards your network within China. However, one thing that I've also realized from Europe, especially, is that if you have big investment, so let's say you have 3 investors, angel or later stage, they are usually all from your home country. They have a very weak connection towards international markets. And it might be that they will advise you, oh no, go to the US first. That is why I did not put investors here, because you need to diversify your entry strategy. So even if you're like well-funded, and a lot of German startups that I'm working with, they are in B round and they have all German investors, they do not know and understand China, and they're afraid of China. So they encourage you not to go to China, but just because they do not know. And that is, if you're in earlier stage, try to diversify your investor portfolio, your advisory portfolio, get some internationals on board. Do not have always the same culture, language, and nationality in there. I spend a bit too much time on here. Any city in China kind of looks like this. So if you look at first year or new first year cities, they have a network like this where you can tap into. If you want to know anything about a certain city, just let me know. I'm not going to dive into 25 cities now. Not enough time for that, but that's my opinion. Maybe Alvaro, do you think this minimum validation triangle makes sense, or you think you should account also some other player into this?
No, I think makes completely sense for me. And I think in my case, the communities, I think it helped me a lot. Because, for example, I wanted to know about lawyers. No, like when I was closing my second round of investment from an Chinese investment fund, how do I know to who? I don't know a lawyer, and how can I find like a neutral lawyer or someone? Then in the communities, there are many events about startups. I joined there, and there is always somebody that can forward to someone. So immediately through communities, I could find a lot of network contacts in different fields. That helped me a lot, and also even for hiring. But well, I'm in a startup way, no? So find people that are willing to suddenly jump into a startup journey, which is not easy. I found them also in communities. Yeah, regarding government, I didn't got too much, but maybe the support that they give for a startup visa, because you have to live here, right? You need to be legally living, and there are some things that you need, like the visa. So now China offers a startup visa. That is something that is very smooth, because before I was working in Microsoft. So when I had to get my visa, I had to give it to the HR department, but it takes a long time. Now the startup visa is very fast, actually. They try to make it fast to help foreigners that are doing their own business here. Jelte, just one thing. There is a question from the audience. Can I read it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. It's a question from Ivy Cruz. Question for Alvaro. Was your MBA all part of the plan to place a product in the Chinese market, or things just happened when you joined and won in that competition? Things just happened. So I was, in the time I joined the MBA, I was already 6 years in China. You know that things that happen in life, that you get lost and you don't know what to do with your life. So I was at that moment. So then I decided to go from the corporate to the, the education world, to the study world. I wanted to study, to learn new things. And that's why I joined the MBA. My purpose was to study, to learn more, but also because when I read the brochures about the MBA, they mention a lot of things about the startups and competitions. And I'm a person that like to build solutions to solve problems. Just one example, I was going from finance class to accounting class, and in the middle, there was an IBM competition. And of course, I missed accounting class, and I went to the IBM competition, and it was good, actually. If you put the map, Jelte, with the cities, at the end, they offer me, give me kind of an offer for Xi'an. Can you see? Can you guys see here? Yeah, oops. Xi'an.
Sorry.
So it was very interesting. So no, IBM have a development research center in Xi'an, and they go to Beijing, to the capital, to do a competition. And then the ones that we got to the final, they kind of give us an offer, or they ask us to invite us to go there. So we want to keep working on software development. So yeah, but at the end, as I said, it was just a coincidence that I started the startup. Cool. Hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much for asking the question. So don't be shy about that. Write anything that you want to ask us, and we will interrupt to dive into this. Okay, so here are some examples from Beijing. And please be aware, I come from a city that has 2,000 inhabitants in Germany. And these numbers are now from Beijing. There are 200,000 incubators. This number sounds crazy, but if you go into any district like Chaoyang or Haidian, you will find hundreds of these incubators focusing on different parts. I would say 90% of them are local. Only 10% of them have an angle that somewhat deals with international entrepreneurs. But this is just, it's so much happening here. And this is the same for all the first-tier cities, the same amount of innovation incubators you will find there. Beijing also has 670 venture capital firms. I saw some numbers, 20,000 angel investors. I think that's also one reason because there are the highest concentration of billionaires in a city is in Beijing. So a lot of rich people. And I think one very important point here is also the 5G stations, which is an indicator for how technology savvy and ready a nation is. And there are 37,000. So if you're currently with a 5G phone here, in most parts of the city, you have 5G. And this just shows like how much innovation capacity there is. Also, one important thing about Beijing, there are 300 tech startups established every day. So the city that I'm from, 4 days, and it's all covered with like startups, right? There are over 1,000 research institutions. For talent, it's perfect. You have 90 plus top universities. If you want to find any talent in AI or so on, you go to Tsinghua. Also any kind of engineering, you go to Beihang or Beida. National high-tech enterprises, that's one qualification, how they look at first-tier innovative companies. And if you're into biotech, healthcare, or so on, there are a lot of national laboratories that you can also tap into. And this now is only Beijing. You will find the same amount of numbers in Shanghai, in Shenzhen, and in Guangzhou. And that's why I didn't want to dive too much into the new first-tier cities. So here are some numbers in terms of comparison of the first-tier cities with the major focus at the end on startups. So in terms of population, they all don't differentiate too much, right? So it's like 18 to 25 million in population. That's official numbers. If you look at unofficial numbers, Beijing would probably be around 30 million, and I think it's the same for any of the others as well. In terms of GDP as well, it's high. So I'm not an economist. I'm not going to dive too much into that. I think most important is the per capita disposable income. People here are wealthy. They can spend a lot of money on consumption and on things. And in that regard, also, they don't divert too much. In terms of startup output, these numbers are from Jing Data, the largest startup intelligence platform in China. And there are 134,000 startups in China, in Beijing, I'm sorry, which is first. Then Shanghai is second in that regard, 112,000. Shenzhen has 85, and Guangzhou has 56. One important thing here is the growth, the GDP growth. A lot of people say everything is possible in Beijing or Shanghai, but those markets have already saturated in a certain regard. There is not much happening anymore. Shenzhen, in that regard, is a booming city. So what you currently see there, everyone wants to get rich. Everyone wants to be part of something. They're all moving, and this trend of starting up is a big thing in Shenzhen. So if you want to be part of a hot period of growth, of entrepreneurship growth, I would recommend you to check out Shenzhen and Guangzhou. Shenzhen more because it's more international savvy and friendly in that regard. But this growth is there. It's not so much in Beijing. There is still a lot happening, but we are too close to the government. In that regard, we are not as sexy. Shanghai is another thing. It's very international and but also saturated. And the business there is not about entrepreneurship. It's about multinational corporations and so on. And then one of the questions that I often get is like, where should I go? Where should I start? What are the focus areas of each of the cities? This is the technical answer. So the government has certain focus areas that they have announced for their cities. Beijing in that regard has new generation of IT, semiconductors, intelligent equipment, mobility, especially AI. I feel like, so in my industry, I feel like everyone is somewhat about AI. And since there are so many universities and research departments, a lot of science and technology support. So if you're entering, by the way, any of these cities and you're from any of these verticals in terms of sector or industry, it's easier to get funding. It's easier to get to resources. But what that means, I have some more in-depth slides about that. I'm not going too much into that, but if you're interested in this, I can share it with you. Shanghai, in that regard, focusing on IoT, healthcare, also automotive, high-end equipment, which is aviation related, smart materials, consumer goods. Let me take a short break here. People ask me then, okay, is there no AI in Shanghai? Or is there no healthcare in Beijing? And the answer is no. The answer is there is. So in any of these big cities of 20 million people, you will find nearly any industry represented in any of these cities. So you can also go to Hangzhou and everything that's covered here will be covered there. You can also find robotic startups in Beijing. You can find like any industry that you want there. 20 million is bigger than most countries in Europe. So don't base a decision on where to go on this. Go there and get to know the city. And when you like it somewhere and you have good partners on the ground, you should start. Shenzhen on hardware, also next generation of IT, smart manufacturing, appliances, anything hardware related actually is located in Shenzhen. If you're into petrochemicals, you can also go to Shenzhen in that regard, and textile industry. And Guangzhou differentiates a bit. They are also similar like Shenzhen, focusing on manufacturing, IoT, but a lot on fintech and service industry, a lot on marine and ship innovation and digital economy. Digital economy, I must honestly say, I'm not really sure what that means in that regard, because all of them are part of digital economy. But that's what the government wrote down. I can give you the slides with the details of each of these descriptions that you know what the focuses are if you're interested in this. But again, each of the cities has nearly everything to offer that you need. And you will find clients in those cities or resources if you're in any of these industries. So now diving a bit into the output of each of the first-tier cities. So you see here the numbers do not match. 130,000 startups that I first showed. And now if you do the math, the few numbers that are here on the right do not add up. Why that is we took only the startups from 2017 and those that are still alive or currently receiving funding. So that's at its core, let's say around 6,000 to 7,000 startups that are really worth mentioning. The others are somewhat statistical. I don't know, might be zombies, might be something else. However, the amount of unicorns is the highest in I would even say the world. 78 unicorns came from Beijing. And 80% of them actually came from Zhongguancun science parks. So if you want to be close to the Silicon Valley of China, check out Zhongguancun, and they have parks all over Beijing, also a few outside of Beijing. And yeah, not going too much into the names here, anything covered. Then in terms of Shanghai, it's only half, 43 unicorns. Output is also not so important. It's like, of course, angel and A round investment is high, and then the later rounds are lower. Probably more interesting is the amount of unicorns that are coming out of the cities. Shenzhen only has 18, so still a lot of room. But Shenzhen is pushed very heavily from the national government to grow, also to become a counter way to Hong Kong and other parts in the region. So you will see in the next 5 to 10 years that this number will quadruple probably and be more like Beijing in that regard. Guangzhou, even though most people do not know where it is or what it stands for, has 12 and probably most important one is Pony AI. They already do self-driving cars on the streets live and test that. And I think that will also be one of the first cities where they will deploy entire full self-driving cars in the market. They speak Cantonese in Guangzhou, which is not Mandarin in that regard. It's a different language. Unless it's written, then they can understand each other. And again, it's not the most international city in that regard. If you're interested in Guangzhou, who you should check out is Brink.io. They are one of the top accelerators, international ones in the regions, and that's the only one that's based in Guangzhou doing something for cross-border. I put in Hangzhou here, even though it's a new first-tier city, has 25. Nearly every 25 unicorns. Nearly every unicorn that is coming out of Hangzhou is somewhat related to Alibaba. Any AI, IoT, digital startup is partly invested by Alibaba in that regard. And they are building an entire digital cities there. A lot of money to get from the city, free housing, grants. They're putting a lot of friendly grants out there for international entrepreneurs. Definitely something that you should check out. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we covered that a bit, which location to choose. Anything else that comes to your mind from the slides that I showed, anything that I forgot to mention or you would like to share? Ivo.
Well, if in the audience there are founders, I think the Beijing, the top cities that you mentioned are the one more active in terms of communities and also events and also maybe competitions. And these are the places where you can meet the investors. The main investors are there as well. So I still vote for the top tier cities based on my experience.
Yeah,
that's how I got my meetings with investors.
Yeah. I would also not.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, so sorry. You continue because I was about to talk about funding, but no, this is not funding yet. Sorry.
Oh, we can talk about funding. We had that before.
It's later, no? So it's fine. I can wait.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I also want to share is be aware that it's harder in second and third tier cities to thrive as a foreign entrepreneur. You need to have definitely Chinese staff on the ground. In Beijing, you can also have a foreign GM in Shanghai and so on. That's fine. But if you go to Nanjing or so on, you need to have a local team. There is no way around that. I did not cover too much about high-tech zones and tech parks. I think in that regard, the EU SME Center has a very vast data set to share with the audience if you're interested, which technology parks are out there. This is a different area. So if you're into greenfield or brownfield or something like this, you want to set up your production facilities here, they will be able to help you more in that regard. I'm eyeing today more on the entrepreneurship angle, right? Okay, so how should you start partners, investors, and clients? That's for you, Ivo. And one important thing that I always say is if you're an entrepreneur, so for those people here in the audience who have started their own business, and if you're, let's say, A round, you came from an idea, you developed your MVP, a minimum viable product, showed it to some clients, you got some investment or you got enough revenue that you can pull up, and you have usually already enough revenue that you can stomach the access to a second market. If you have a second or third market, second or third country, you're in growth stage. That means, so usually growth is measured by weekly growth, but I will keep it here way simpler. So the moment you're not just in your home country, but let's say in the US or India or Japan or something, then you're in growth stage. What happens if you come to China is you're not, so let's say you are in your home market, a growth startup, and you come to China, you're not a growth startup here. You are early. You need to start from scratch. You need to build your MVP. Because whatever you know about how your industry works, how everything goes, you need to put that aside and take a step back. You need to think about what are your customers? What is the market? How can you enter? What kind of partnerships can you set up? You need to start from scratch. Too many people come and say, we are the top of the industry. We know everything. We know how to do it. They come to the market and say, I'm going to do it here exactly as I've done it in Silicon Valley or US or Canada or some other developed country. That's not how it works. You will fail 100%. So you need to take a step back and send some engineers, technical people to understand what is needed in the market and how can you adapt that. And you need to have someone who is really good with strategies and partner access. And with that, you create a new MVP and you create a strategy for the market. Do not try to just distribute stuff to China. That will not work. And then in China, you start in one city, Beijing, and you're still early stage. You need to grow. So you get from Beijing to Shanghai to Shenzhen, and then slowly you start covering the market. So you're not a growth startup in China. You start from zero. And you need to keep this entrepreneurship mind in your head. You need to constantly solve problems and move forward. And one thing that I realized is a lot of the entrepreneurs that I meet that are in A and B round, they forget what it means to be an entrepreneur. They're like, oh, but I have 10 million to spend. I just do it. That's not how you solve problems. You have to sit down and think and brainstorm how you actually build something that people want. That is a different approach. So you have to keep this entrepreneurship spirit in your mind and start from scratch in that regard. And then in China, you can also become established. You can, for example, start with a joint venture and you come to an established point and you exit and you go IPO with your daughter company in China without going IPO with your mother startup in that regard. So those are strategies that usually make sense. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Alvaro? Because that is a slide that I think is very important.
I think you said very well. I just was wondering from the audience how many founders there are and how many people actually have a business that wants to bring into China. But I don't know.
We can actually do that. We can. We have a poll. I'm gonna launch it right now, so all the participants are gonna see the poll on the screen right now. And there are three main questions. The questions are, do you work for a startup? Yes or no? What's your level of knowledge regarding today's topic so that they understand so far you have been explaining the basic background. And then the third question is a little bit about expectations. And we are actually receiving the answer so far. Perhaps we can give them a few more seconds just to reply and then we can analyze it.
Sure, let's do the poll.
It's happening right now.
Okay.
I think perhaps you're seeing your screen, so you're just seeing the presentation. So right now we got like over 10 responses. 73% do not work for a startup. So let's say that they are foreign to the startup environment and way of working. The level of knowledge on today's topic, I will say the majority has a basic knowledge, no zero, but basic, whilst only 17% considers that they have advanced knowledge. And we have only 88% of experts. I think maybe we can close the poll right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I can also add a few more things, I think, in my presentation about not startup related topics, so that I do not just walk the startup talk, but I will add a few more things in the slides then later. Alvaro, does it help you, the poll?
Yeah. Yes, some people, concrete example of startups in China, maybe I can tell more details later. Yeah. Oh, if you guys have a concrete question, like I have many scars from all the battles I have had here. So you want to know how I did that scar, just ask me. I don't know, what would you like, Jelte, I tell from here? I think you explained very well. I think that's the startup way, no? Idea, MVP, early growth, established. Yeah, I met many people also trying to bring the business here, and sometimes I personally think knowing the language helps, because that's my personal story. Yeah? I personally talking with my clients, talking with my investors, fundraising, talking with my lawyer, everything I do it in Chinese, and that helps me. And sometimes when I see some foreigners, I see them frustrated, because sometimes, I don't know, I think it can help you mastering the language. Just an advice.
This is one thing that I want to say also to the audience. Like, Ivo has a unique way how he became the person he is now today. It's very hard to replicate that for international companies, small and medium enterprises or startups, because not everybody can say, hey, I'm going to start now to become fluent in Chinese. However, what you should learn also from this, even though it's hard to replicate it, is you need people like Ivo. You need people who can navigate in this landscape and who you can trust. Either you are the person who can navigate there, or you need people like him who can navigate there. Because if you do not do that, you're blind, you're frustrated, and you will not go forward. And you will say, China, no, thank you, I will go home. You need that, right? That's probably a key takeaway. Yeah. Also,
yeah. I think that you said is also correct. Also, regarding now that come to my mind regarding the incubators, I'm not sure if that may be interesting for the audience, but I remember that I also here in China, at the beginning, I didn't started in the incubator of the university. I started outside of the university in other incubators. Like, I just wanted an office to work, to have some people on my team to work. And nothing is actually free, right? Like everything in life. So I remember, as a personal story, I remember my first office was, I have a friend that is French, that he had an office, had a meeting room. So during the weekends, he allowed me and my partner to go to the meeting room to use it as an office so we can discuss. But it lasted just like a couple of months, because maybe the boss was not happy. So we couldn't use that anymore. It lasted 1 month. Then I remember I went to a co-working spaces here in Beijing, and some are not cheap actually. The ones that, I don't know, I think the life here in Beijing is not that cheap in the center. It can be, I'm from Barcelona, more expensive than the Barcelona, and the price I'm paying to some developers here is higher than some developers back in Barcelona as well. So at that time I was struggling, how to get an office. So in my case, since I have this solution for live translation technologies for events and congress and meetings, I used to offer that for free. I go to one incubator and I tell them, hey, all the events that you're going to do, I allow you to have free translation, AI translation, and you in exchange give me a table with a seat, 2 tables and 2 chairs. So that was how I started working. And then, of course, after a few months, suddenly had to pay. So then we went out from there, and at the end we ended up in the university. I didn't start it straightforward in the university because at the beginning I was alone. So alone, I was thinking I can work from home. I don't need to come to a co-working space. But in the moment that I had a partner, and he was a Finnish from Finland, he was a Finnish guy, bigger, like a Viking, bigger than me. Then it was weird to bring him home. No, my wife was not happy. So we had to find a place to work together. So yeah, that's like an anecdote, how we were in Beijing finding places to work and we work it out. But yeah, that's the beginning of any entrepreneur. Is hard.
I think this is important both for small and medium enterprises that want to enter China, as well as for startups, that you can start with one person and this person can start working from home to keep it cheap. But if you really want to be committed, you need to get an office and you need to get them tapping into a network. You will lose them otherwise. They need to be surrounded by people. So get them a good co-working space. If you're a startup, get into an incubator. If you're a corporate, get into a WeWork. Just that they have a network, and then you can slowly grow from there. Do not try to keep it cheap, and Beijing is not cheap in that regard. neither is Shanghai or, well, Shenzhen is still okay. Yeah.
So far in Beijing, besides the university accelerator that always will give me a meeting room I can use anytime, there is also another institutional organization that also offers a free office for companies that have as a founder a foreigner. Still, you can find some kind of these benefits if you are a foreigner. Yeah, just to let you know.
Yeah. Cool. Here are some people that you should know. I sometimes just put in some names. Those are community people. So if you are really aiming to come to China and you think about Shanghai, go to LinkedIn, check out Marian Danko or Jill Tang. Both of them are more than welcome to accept your friend invite, and they are very community-driven people. Marian is an entrepreneur from Czech, and he's one of the best connected people that I know in the region, also covering Hangzhou and Chongqing pretty well. Jill leads Ladies Who Tech, one of the largest community organizations focusing on women in technology and STEM. And she covers nearly entire China, also Singapore and so on. So both very good people to know. What I'm saying here is add them, write to them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want to learn about China. Can we have a call? And they will say yes. That's why I put them here. Not everybody would do that, but those two would. And if you're eyeing on Guangzhou, Ivo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, actually, you never introduced me them, but I also know them. So Marian, actually, I also had a coffee in Shanghai at my very beginning. I think when I had my first client in Shanghai, I met him as well. And Jill also, she's always doing events in also Ladies Who Tech, no? Promoting technology also for ladies communities. I think it was also very helpful. Yeah, just to let you know, I also knew them from my site. They are well connected if you want them to do some introduction or give you some advice.
Yeah, cool. Then for Guangzhou, here are some people. Chance Jiang, he is in the smart manufacturing world, super helpful guy, always happy to support. And Ade, I think he's now in San Francisco, but he has a very, very strong network. He worked for IBM before. By the way, down there are some quotes about what they think about their home city, where they worked or lived. You can read that later on in the slides. And Mint, also a community builder from Startup Grind. She works in a SaaS startup right now. All three are people you should know if you want to learn about Guangzhou. If you are into smart manufacturing, check out Chance. And if you're into internet bridging between China and rest of the world, talk to Chance. Good people. Yeah. Shenzhen, without Jan, I would have not joined, I think, that quickly into the entrepreneurship world. He was the APAC manager of Startup Grind before. One of the best people you can know. He will help you to connect and to open doors. Really good guy. Now Sheen, she's part of Startup Grind, very heavy in the content and B2C world. Also very happy to help you to connect. And Grace is one of the strongest people you can know in both the Chinese and local and international community in Shenzhen. She works with all the chambers, anything entrepreneurship related. Nobody better to know than her. Her quote is short, but her expertise is massive, way more than I have actually. So add them on LinkedIn if you can. And here are some of my friends from Beijing. Yasmin, she's the current APAC director of Startup Grind. She's from Germany. Ka is from Georgia. He now moved to Shanghai, working for China Accelerator. And Sabrina is also co-director of Startup Grind Beijing. That's enough praise. You get the slides later, add them, and they are nice people. So this is a standard operating procedure, which I put together, which I think explains very good how you as a foreign, also SME, but most likely startup, should enter. Learn the basics. So learn about Fapiao, learn about accounting and so on and so on. Do that with your SME center. define your strategy, how to enter. Do you want a WOFE? Do you want a joint venture? Do you want to have an R&D center, which is highly underestimated, I think? Do you want to enter through distribution? Once you choose that, next step is you shortlist cities. And the best thing that you can do if COVID wouldn't be here, just come here and travel. And the moment you feel like this city feels like home, that's where you should set your roots. If you have friends there, you have some connections, you will find everything that you need. Unless you're a high tech, then you should do a bit deeper research on is there talent. Because most people, if you go to Hainan, you will be like, oh, that's amazing, but you will find no talent there. And that's one of the toughest things. Then next step is you need to build relations to the top incubators and accelerators. Because they will provide you with the resources to how you set up your company, how you get to investors, what competitions are out there. They will help you with that. And then from that, you should get a good friend. Because without a good friend on the ground, you will have a very hard time as a foreign entrepreneur or SME to really be successful here. That might be that you have someone from the chamber really being there for you, caring about your business, caring about the problem that you're solving, caring about you entering the market. Better have 2 or 3. You will need that sooner or later to rely on them and to cross-validate information. Then you start joining a summit. You can join a summit, a demo day, an acceleration program, not before. A lot of people just start doing that without doing the homework before and having their strategy ready. And only then you can start registering your company. So if you win something in Beijing or Shenzhen or so and so on, then you start. And then you start actually talking to the local governments, not before. A lot of people get into these tours by the government saying like, hey, let's come to Nanjing. And then you commit, you start your business and register, and you realize nothing comes out of it. It's because they do not know how to deal with you. So you started too early dealing with the governments. But that is the point where you should start, because once you commit, you put in the energy, the efforts, you start paying your taxes. That's where the government says, and like, you're a foreign entrepreneur, I want to tour you around as my trophy because I've attracted you to my realm. That is very, very important for any foreign entrepreneur to understand. And the better you are at that, the better you will thrive. And from that day on, you need to work on your guanxi. Why governments in that regard are important, I cover that in the next slides. This is a very simple path, a lot of different ways how you can get through, but do not start with governments and do not start without doing your homework. Sounds obvious, but I would say 95% of the startups and SMEs that I talk to do not follow this. They just say like, okay, I pay a consultant or I start with the government. It's wrong. Like this, if you want to be successful, do that. Anything you want to add, Alvaro, here?
No, I think you're explaining very good.
Okay. Yeah, probably the government thing, maybe I can even help you that you get to your 100K grant that you didn't get yet. Yeah, so I think this one we've already, do you know any mistakes of foreign entrepreneurs? You mentioned some of them talk to you that you've seen them doing, that you warned the audience about?
I think the main challenges that I see of foreign entrepreneurs doing are not challenges because they are foreigners or because they're in China. It's just because it's product and the market, or the problem that they are solving is not the right problem. Yeah. Or I think usually it's a business problem. It's not a country, nationality, or grant, or government. So that's the biggest challenge that I see but from Chinese entrepreneurs, from foreign entrepreneurs, from both sides. And also, you mentioned also something about the government. Yeah, also sometimes organizations, the client is the government. That also is very challenging for foreigners, but also for Chinese, for both sides, no? But I guess also back in Spain or in Germany, to have a government as a client, sometimes there are some conditions, no? The payment, the time that they need to pay, and everything. So yeah, it's more business problems what I see, not other specific.
Okay. Yeah, I can also share some stories about common mistakes later if you're interested in that. I've run, I know, like 60, 70 startups already that try to enter, and I can share you some common mistakes that usually come out if you're interested in that. So incentives, this one will dive now into governments. And why am I talking about governments? This one is a picture of me being the first foreign employee at a state-owned enterprise. In a way, it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot about China, and I can say that I understand the world in a different way now because I've been part of this organization for 4 years, helping the local state-owned enterprise to become a landing platform for international entrepreneurs. The little pink is me. There is one other foreigner, Kaha, but he left to Shanghai to join China Accelerator as well. I also left the company in June, so I'm not part of this anymore. But there is a lot of fun that you can have, even with a state-owned enterprise, even though it sometimes doesn't sound as cool. But a lot of good people there. All of them want you to succeed in China. And I'm going to share you a couple of insights that I learned over the last couple of 4 years.
Just one story. I remember it was a government-related co-working space also that they offered me like an office, but in exchange they wanted equity of the company, and I remember they were telling me, "Oh, this is normal. You are a foreigner. You don't understand." Blah blah blah. This stuff. And I remember that at that time the co-working space have already introduced me a law firm, and it's a big one actually. It's a big one, but they also do these kind of free projects once in a while. And then I asked them, "Oh, take me as a project, please." And they took me. I went to their office in the CBD of Beijing, high building. And I think it was this lawyer, Chinese lawyer, but these lawyers, their English was very good actually. And they were telling me, "Alvaro, don't sign this contract." And I said, "Why not? It's only 4% of my company and I get free office and the resources." And they were telling me, "No, because this is blah, blah, blah. Alvaro, I handle many contracts like this one coming to my table. This is the worst one. You cannot accept this." So at the end, luckily, thanks to the lawyer, at the end I refused. Of course, the state-owned was saying, "Oh, you don't understand, you're a foreigner," but I was saying, "But it's not me now anymore. It's a Chinese lawyer telling me to don't sign this with you." So at the end, I didn't sign it. So it was very good at that time to have this law firm, to take the contract, to read it through. And I think for every clause, they give me a comment. And they were all against all the clauses. It was very interesting to see how they disagreed. They said, that I shouldn't sign this with that specific state-owned co-working space. So.
Yeah, that goes in the direction of do your basic homework, get lawyers involved, get your IP registered, check your contracts, do due diligence on your partners. You would do that in the US, you should do that in China too. So if the lawyers tell you this is not good, don't follow with that, right? But a lot of people, they say like, "Oh no, China is nowhere's land. Even if I sign this contract or not sign this contract, I'm not secured." Always surprised about this statement, but you can actually enforce a lot and you can make good use of lawyers. And also the EU SME Center has a free legal hotline, by the way, for all of you are European entrepreneurs or SMEs, you can call them and they give you first advice. Of course, not too deep, then they refer you to others, but it's a good first start. Yeah, I already covered this one. This is still what a lot of people think, how it goes. It's still the case in some industries, but that's not how you do business in China. Also not leveraging the network of the government. That was 20 years ago. However, if you, let's say now in the semiconductor industry, wind power or something like this, and you need to go to a 4th, 5th tier city, this is still what you will see. So they will still ask you to drink baijiu, but in 1st tier cities, it's not the case anymore. Very uncommon that you're invited and you need to drink. But giving face and having a personal touch to business is very important. If they want to enter a partnership with you, a JV, invest in you or so and so on, you need to have dinner with them. You need to understand them. You should bring your wife. That's a good thing to do. But the standard of drinking baijiu, which is schnapps, 40%, I don't like the taste. A lot of people do. I do not know why. A bottle is like $1,000 or more. In case you do not know that, it's not common standard anymore. If you enter something like this and you're in high tech, you're probably meeting the wrong people. Just saying that on the side. So why is the government so important? It's the invisible hand. Nothing in China, no business decision, no society decision is done without having the government guiding it. And you should better understand that and better be part of it than trying to work against that. Because everybody around you will understand how to work with that and how to give in or move in this regard. All of them are agile enough that they can rotate, unless you're like in education industry and you went IPO in the last couple of months and you did something against the government, then they come in and they kill you. But this is very unlikely to most people to happen. What I want to say is better be close to the government. And I have one slide that explains exactly the benefits of this. There are 102 companies that are directly owned by the party state. That is massive. And if you're looking at any industry that you can potentially operate, has state-owned enterprises. In most countries that you're from, you do not have this kind of depth anymore. Sometimes you do not even know that you're acting with a state-owned enterprise. And all of them have as their client the government. So they're not serving really the clients at the end. They are serving the government in that regard. Should be aware of that. Also, they are very important if you want to have partnerships or clients and so on, that you understand how to deal with these companies. Here are just some examples. Most important one is SASAC, State-Owned Asset Supervision and Administration Commission of the State Council. That's, I would say, similar to Apple in that regard. Most of the top Chinese companies belong to SASAC. Here are some examples: Sinopec, China Mobile, NOCC, State Grid. If you want to do any business in B2B, you need to be aware of what that means. There are like 40 million people that work for this conglomerate. 40 million. That is different than a Volkswagen or a Siemens or other companies. That is massive. 10 million of them are Communist Party. And this is the invisible hand. You will see and feel that everywhere. You get a notion about what is going well, what's not going well. And you should understand that if you want to do good business. And here are the top 3 reasons why I think you should understand that, both as a startup as well as a larger company or an SME. Resources. The government provides. They are the ones that give you most of the resources. And if not directly, then indirectly. All the incubators and accelerators get resources through the government. Reputation. If you work with a top tier government or any government, national government or so on, you get reputation and can use that. I have a picture, for example, where I'm standing on the stage with the mayor of Beijing. Since then, I have faced to any government in China. I can just go, I was on stage with the mayor of Beijing. So I can go wherever I want. And you can do the same. If you're a foreign entrepreneur or SME, you can go on the stage and you get reputation and you can carry that as a trophy. And the last one is security. Because very often you're not aware of where are certain risk factors. And China is not an industry or a country where they are punishing. They're advising you in a friendly way to change things. They're seldomly punish. If you're punished in a way, you've done something for very odd or very wrong, but usually they tell you in a certain way to shift your direction. If you're surrounded by a network that understands the government very, very well, you will understand when there are initiatives that change your industry that you should be aware of, so you can prepare. If you do not have that and you push by yourself, you do not have this security. So you should learn that. If you're really serious about China, you need to get that right. So here are some resources that you can tap into. Visa, R&D grants, talent, hukou. If you want to hire local Chinese, you need to be aware of the hukou system, because let's say you're in Beijing and you hire someone from Chengdu and you bring them to Beijing and they have kids, the kids cannot go to school here in Beijing. So if you have a hukou, which is like something like a residence permit, the kids can then go in Beijing to school, which is worth around 1 to 2 million RMB. That's a lot of money. And sometimes you get that through the governments. You get grants, you get free housing. So if I would go to Hangzhou and open up my company there, I get free housing. That's like $1,500 per month. You get investment, tax incentives, and free office. That's now a general. Sometimes in Beijing it's less, in Hangzhou it's more, but these are the resources that you're looking at. Again, this one, I showed it before. So this is how the incentives are usually propagated towards the market. The state, the national government usually talks to the army of state-owned enterprises because the people doing the work are state-owned enterprises. The general managers interpret that and put that into the divisions of their departments of their company. So you have the corporate innovation department, the incubation department, the investment department. Each of them has a VP for this business line. And the general manager interprets what they are supposed to do. And what you usually do as the SME or a startup, you talk to one of the mid-term or mid-level managers who is at one department and has one KPI to fulfill, and they do not understand the full picture. And that is one thing that you should be aware of, because very often you're frustrated because you feel like you're talking against the wall. People are just saying like, I can only give you this because that's what I know. You should be aware of, if you want to have the full picture, you need to move up the value chain and talk to the general manager or someone above the VP who helps you to understand who else has the resources that you need. And the reason why, for example, Alvaro didn't get probably some of the government things is because he talked to the incubation department at one of the state-owned enterprises, not to the government department. And the government department doesn't know how to serve the startups. So then he needs to talk both to the government, the incubation, and the service department. And once you get all of that right, you get what you need. So if you feel you're stuck, you're frustrated, that's usually based on that. And in between these departments, there's no cross communication happening. It's an entire top-down approach. Be aware of that. Also, one important factor is very often the KPI is you as a startup to land in their city. But they only see you as a KPI. So if Alvaro goes to Beijing, I say, check mark, done. But they only communicate that to the upper level, and they do not care about the service to you. So they do not care about helping you out, giving you more support. They've done their job. The government will be happy about what they've done, and then they let you be. And that's very tough, very frustrating. And what's happening usually is they have in between these private organizations, and they take the KPIs of the government or state-owned enterprises, and they serve. They know how to talk to the entrepreneurs and help you out. So very often you should not directly talk to the state-owned enterprises or governments. You will talk to the private sectors. Here are some for different regions. Pegasus Tech Ventures is for Chengdu, Brink is for Guangzhou, Plug and Play is all over the place, TechCode is also all over the place. Xnode is one of the best ones in Shanghai, NeHub is in Hangzhou, the lab is one of the Beijing ones. Those are the people that really care about you and go deeper and support you and give you the answers, usually, right? There are more, of course. Yeah, Alvaro, you want to add anything to the part that I mentioned so far? You just need to drink for a second.
Yeah, I didn't deal too much with this government stuff. Yeah, I'm not good at that neither. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will figure that out. We will get you the grant. I actually get into grant examples in a bit, but I try to move through that quicker, that we also come to Arcade with the case. Let me quicken that up. So by the way, one thing that a lot of people do wrong if they want to tap into incentives or grants is they put their CEO on top, but sometimes the CEO doesn't have the best profile. And there you have to look at, and I have already mentioned that, the one with a PhD, put them first. If you have an MA or whatever from a global top 50 university, put them first. If you have someone with most patents, put them first. In my startup, for example, my CTO has a way better profile than I have, so I'm not even mentioned in that regard. It's like, here's the CTO, he's from Tsinghua University, blah, blah, blah. So get the ego out of the way. If you want to get into grants or something, be pragmatic and put a person on there, and the governments usually also adjust you and say like, you should put this person there because you will get more face, more grants, more access to stuff, right? Be pragmatic in that regard. China is very pragmatic. They will classify you as people. They will look at what's your salary, what's your education, what's your background, and so on and so on. I'm a B, class B. I think Alvaro was too, a class B. It's very hard to get a class A unless you have a very high level of salary and very high Chinese proficiency. Alvaro's Chinese is definitely better than mine. This is something that also gives you access to different levels of grants. They will assess you and your team on how good you are. So some of the common mistakes that I see is, even after saying all of this, is they do not tend to trust the governments, and that's a mistake. You need to have this friend, good accelerator and incubator, and you need to have trust in the local government in China. So if it's a state-owned so I do not mean trust everything they say and just assign everything blindly, because there are still mistakes that can happen. But you need to have trust in the government and work with them together. Working against them can work for a while, but you will not thrive, just in general. One mistake that I also see is people attend and say, I want this grant. I saw that in Hangzhou, but there are certain things that you need to do. And how you get to a 3 million grant is you start small. You get something little like a 10K tax incentive or something. Then after a year, you get a 100K tax incentive. Then after 3 years or something, you get 3 million. You never get money upfront in that regard. You have to fulfill certain conditions. You have to have certain revenue. You have to spend time somewhere. And that's one of the common mistakes with startups, but also with SMEs. Gimme Cash Now goes in the same direction. You need to be patient about it. So if you win a demo day, you probably need to wait a year or something. You need to commit. You need to register your company wherever this competition was, and then you get the cash maybe after a year. Nothing upfront. Sometimes they say 50% cash upfront, but that's seldom. You can do it yourself. Goes also in the same direction. You can do it. But if you have the vision of owning China in your product niche, you should not do it, because you will, if people see there is an opportunity and the market is big enough, they will just come in and they will have government support. And you should understand that. So here are some examples. How much time do we have? Because otherwise I will skip through the examples or go very quickly through that. Short.
Jelte, we have around 30 minutes and then we will go for the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I still have some time. Okay. Okay, so here are some of the things. This is based on Beijing, by the way, where you get tax reduction. So you can reduce your tax from from 40 to 25%. Usually, if you're in high tech and you have the technology in your company name and you're in the right tax zone, you get a lot of tax incentives. All of these have preconditions, but usually you do not do your accounting yourself anyway. So if you're working with an accountant firm or something, they will tell you about this, because the more money you save, the more happier you will be with the accountant firm anyway, right? So this is a basic thing. R&D expense support. I think I mentioned that before. One of the most underestimated ways to enter China is R&D. You get a lot of support in terms of R&D. And what you can do is you learn about the Chinese market and you can produce for the world. You can learn for the world. And China is about China speed. And all of us come from Europe or European-based companies. And one thing that we are not good at is speed. China speed is different. Like if you bring your top tier product here, you wait 6 months, there is a competition who has the same quality or higher. This is China speed. They do not wait. They have this 996 working culture. They all have goals and ambitions. They have a lot of money to burn. They can easily get into anything that you already have. So that's why I think R&D is a good thing, because you can learn without being at risk that your top products will be copied. And you can bring this China speed and China knowledge back to your home country and US or Europe. And here's one thing where you can get around 200,000 on top or $1 million on top, depending on how much you spend yourself on R&D. And expenditure in R&D is usually if you hire an AI engineer, or in general, you spend on certain patents. Shift part of that to China and you get a lot of resources. If you're in certain smart material or national government incentives, you even get like way more than this, and that you get the space for free, the laboratories for free, sometimes staff for free. There's a lot of money that you can tap into. Investment upgrade. I think this is one that I mentioned to Alvaro and he failed to get. Maybe we can talk about this in a bit. What you need to do is you need to get 3 million of investment, 3 million RMB in China. That must come from a Chinese VC firm, registered VC firm. If it's not a Chinese registered VC firm, you will not get access to that. And what you get on top, the government in Beijing here, for example, they mirror this and say like, here's 100,000 for free, plus you will get into this exclusive club of successfully founded startups, and then you're like, again, handed around like a trophy. It's very important to know. Maybe here we can make a short break and go to Alvaro. Why didn't it work for you? This case you applied for.
I don't know. You tell me why it didn't work out.
Yeah, but you got the investment of 3.5 million for your startup, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But from a private VC, not from the government.
Yeah, that will be probably the reason. So if an angel investor comes in and invests in you, that is not an official government registered VC. So only from them, if you get that, you get free money from the government. That's probably the reason why you didn't get this one.
Oh, okay.
They need to have a certain license for that. So this is where a lot of people actually come to me and say like, hey, but I raised 5 million. But if it's from a private investor or something like this, then you are not entitled to get these grants. So by the way, a lot of these service providers, they also take kind of an financial advisor role, and they say you are qualified to get this or that grant, and they take 5 to 10% of the end sum that they can get out. So for example, one of the service providers I work with, they also do that. You can tell them, I want to get into this grant, try to do it. And if you do it, then you get 10% of that. So they would get 10,000 RMB out of this if they would get you into this, which is still a nice deal. Talent is actually one of the things that the government is pushing for very, very much. So if you have, for example, if you have a PhD, they want you, and they will pay a lot of money for that. They will give you free apartments. They will give you a lot of landing support and so on, so on. So if you're an SME or a startup and you have someone with a PhD and they might consider going to China, do that. And this person will get a lot of support. Your company will get a lot of support. If you are yourself or you have someone in your team who is a returnee Chinese, you can. This is also part of the national strategy to kind of bring back the second generation Chinese to the homeland, because they want to have all the knowledge transfer, right? And that's where they also pay a lot of money to get them over. So if you have part of your team members being second generation Chinese or so on, send them over and you get a lot of support. And this is up to 1 million RMB per person. So a lot of money. This is around 150,000 euros that you can get per person and incentives. So I did not go actually into raising money because I think you are the expert on that. You've successfully done that, a lot of money. Can you share, Alvaro, what do you think are the do's and don'ts when raising money here in China as a foreign entrepreneur?
Well, I don't have a slide, but I'm gonna tell them my story, maybe. So as you guys, I mean the audience, as you heard, so I won that competition, and then I started my business having revenue, and then I went to a co-working space incubator. The first things that happened to me as an entrepreneur is that at the beginning because I was working before in the corporate world, no? Companies like Microsoft, so I had my savings. But I remember when I brought my co-founder, he was a student. So he told me, yeah, I remember he was hungry, like he had to eat, so he needed some money. So at that moment, we realized, okay, now the revenue doesn't cover completely the cost, so we need some investment. And at that time, we checked with the incubators. So the incubator where I was, they organized many events, many competitions. But I realized that talking with investors, actually, you spend a lot of time and energy. In my case, also I had to talk in Chinese. So it's very time consuming. And I felt that we were not ready to fundraise from a venture capital. So I asked if there is any possibility for a private investment. Maybe private investment is better. So I remember the first, at that time, it was like our intern give us some money, 50,000 euros, 15,000 euros. Then another startup founder gave us 15,000 euros. And there is also, at the university, since I was doing many tests in some lectures, a professor also gave me around 20,000 euros. And then the incubator also, because it's famous, the incubator, there are some professional angel investors, like people maybe as a hobby, they invest, but in many startups. So they go to the incubator to check with the incubator, is there any startup recently, something interesting? And I remember that there is one American private investor. The American private investor, he was looking for a startup that has a founder that can speak English fluently. So they introduced us, and I think it was good because after a couple of meetings, he also gave us like 20,000 euros. So at the end, it was like 100,000 US dollars that we closed for our first round. And it was through convertible notes. So basically, I didn't give equity because I didn't have very clear how much was the valuation of the company at the moment. So the convertible note basically means that we sign a contract, I receive the money, and then in the moment that I fundraise from an investment fund, a venture capital, these guys are going to force me to evaluate the company because these guys are going to immediately ask for equity. So in that moment that I have a valuation, I can give back to my private investors equity, but also with how to say, with a compensation, like 20% more that they deserve because they invested in a very early stage. So that's a convertible note. It's called SAFE from Y Combinator, and I use that. So that was the first round of investment from private investors. Then end of the year, we start to fundraise because we were getting more revenue. So, and I start to participate to competitions. And then the venture capital firms are I think I met like 30 of them, but only 5 actually. I get to the managing partner, the one that makes the decision to bring it to the board to decide if they invest or not. And out of these 5, I got 2 term sheets. It means 2 venture capital firms, they give me the contract. Hey, Alvaro, these are the conditions. If you like it, we can give you now the detailed contract. Out of these 2, I choose one. I don't know. There are many anecdotes in this fundraising journey. Do you guys want more details, or you think that's enough? Because I'm not sure if someone is fundraising or not.
I'm actually interested in, or maybe you can share it, how important it was for you to speak Chinese. So can anybody just go and pitch as a foreigner, or how important do you think it is to speak Chinese in that regard?
I think it was important. All my pitches were always in Chinese. Yeah, always. And of course, as a foreigner, pitching is hard because they always use the card of, oh, you're a foreigner, you're not serious, you're just playing around. That's always hard a little bit. But the investors are hard with you as they are hard with the Chinese entrepreneurs as well. So I think I remember that I had in some competitions that there were like 15 Chinese startups and myself, and I had to do it in Chinese. And I received the criticism like, hey, you're a foreigner, so if I give you the money, you may leave the country. So sometimes these things that they are not sure. And I remember I didn't like it always to receive that feedback. But I remember that even we were 15 startups, at the end I was the only one that when I was leaving the competition upset because I didn't like they thought that I was playing around because I'm a foreigner. Like I took it as like nothing serious. I was not happy, but I remember the secretary of the managing partner just found me outside. I was leaving the room. They say, hey, Alvaro, tomorrow when you come to the office at 4 p.m. I was thinking, okay, I was still upset. But then I went to the typical high building. That is just another word, no? High building, people wearing a suit, investors. So, and then I remember that I also told them, hey, why you get this guy talk to me in that way, thinking that I'm playing around, and now he wants to meet me. And he said, and remember they said, oh, because he likes you, Alvaro. But look, they remind me, look what he said to the other startups. They were all Chinese. I think that for me, it was attacking me because maybe I was a foreigner, but for the other ones, they were attacking because they didn't have money. It's like, hey, you are fundraising, but you cannot generate revenue to maintain yourself. So you cannot even to prove me that you have a sustainable business model. So in my case, I had a sustainable business model. So at the end, that's what he preferred, my project rather than the other projects. I think that's the most important thing. No? If you can prove yourself and to everyone that you have a sustainable business model, then that anyone is attracted to that, even they are from another nationality, because that's the investor. And I remember at the end, it didn't work out well with this investor because I think we were from different backgrounds, just by the way of communicating all the meetings, because we know when you receive the contract, then you go through the lawyer, then you have every clause, you have hey, change this, change this, change this. I realized there were too many things to change and they didn't want to change neither, right? So it becomes like a 3 hours discussion in Chinese about this clause, please change that, like this, like that. So at the end, they didn't want to work with me. I also was not interested in them anymore. But at the same time, I had a meeting in the co-working space, one investor, and they said, hey, Alvaro, you are in the multilingual translation, and we are also, it's like an investment fund that have an LP, a limited partner that is a voice recognition company in China. So they give them millions to this fund to invest in startups that are using voice recognition. No, it's kind of a strategic partnership. And then they were interested. I had to fly to Shanghai to meet the managing partner, and surprisingly, I really liked the guy. I think after meeting so many investors, he gave me good feeling. Of course, he didn't speak English, everything in Chinese, but he had done his own startup before. I could see that. I could see all the investors, even you need to send them your pitch, you need to send them materials. When you arrive, they always say, okay, pitch to me. But this guy was different. When I went to his office, which was smaller, maybe comparing with other big funds that I had met, is the only one that said, you don't need to pitch to me, Alvaro. I already did my homework. I know all your startup. I know your business. I have seen your pitch before. So let's talk in more detail. I don't know, someone that I felt respected and you appreciate that when you're fundraising. And I also like a lot because, of course, I went with my contract with some translation because sometimes some part of the contract I don't understand. And I remember he told me, Alvaro, you are like me. He said, a few years ago, I sold my company in B round to an American fund, and I was using Baidu Translate. What are you using? I said, Google Translate. So he had gone through the same I was going through. So I felt this guy not only respect me, he understands me. It's not easy. Of course, I'm defensive, no? You're going to receive money from you, several millions, and I'm going to give you equity of my company. So I just want to make sure I don't give you my soul. So yeah, so then he also is an investor that also educate me how this works, no? Like, hey, Alvaro, there are 52 terms. You cannot fight for the 52 of them. Pick the 3 that hurt you the most, the ones you hate the most. And these 3, let's find a common ground. Yeah, it was good. So at the end, we signed the contract and we received the 3.6 million, like half million US dollars. Yeah, and that was my. Now, of course, it was not easy. It sounds like in a minute that it seems easy to fundraise. Meeting 30 investment funds is not easy for 2 things. Physically, you have to go to meet them, it's tiring, and also psychologically, because they're going to attack you from wherever they can. No, it's like, it's your baby. You build your own company, and they're going to tell you, other one can do this better, can do this faster. Why you? Why like that? Like that? You don't. In my case, you don't understand the market. You are a foreigner. I tell you, hey, I'm living here 10 years, but still, you don't have the roots like others have. So you see every excuse. At the beginning, I'm human. I get pissed off. Sometimes I talk very bad, but you start to learn how to control yourself. And at the end, you realize that this is part of the process. So then when you start meeting already 15 firms or 16, the 17th, you just not react the same. No? You just smile, you eat all the feedback, and then politely you start to answer back. Why is it in this way? Or for example, I even found a good argument why to say it's better to invest me as a foreigner than if I were a Chinese. Why is better? Of course, you have to prepare. There's a debate. So I have an answer for that also. So yeah, and I remember how to find investors. It was the old way. I realized there is an event in Beijing, and one of the speakers is it was Gen Fund, the one that invested in OFO, this sharing bike business. It's a big firm here in China. I just went there. The event finished, then you just wait. The guy goes to the elevator to go back home. You wait in the elevator. I remember it was a colleague of mine also was waiting there, and then we intercept the guy. Or I remember there was another competition, and I know one of the investors was Sequoia. Then we just go there, and in the moment that there is a break, we intercept the guy, and we just in 1 minute we do the pitch. Hey, we're making revenue. We are almost break even. My clients are Harvard, Audi, McKinsey. Can you consider to have a meeting? And then the guy say, oh yes. Of course, he was shocked. Like suddenly we were surrounding him. We don't allow him to leave. But that's the way we try to find investors. So yeah, I hope I don't know if this can help or somebody can learn something from this story. Yeah.
I think it's very impressive. Alvaro, you mentioned 16 investment firms, right?
More, 30.
30. Even 30 is very impressive to get to that closure, because usually if you want to get to this kind of deal at early stage, you need to get to around 80, 90, 100 pitches. So really getting to the closure, you have been very efficient in that regard. Just something personal that probably the audience doesn't know, but I would like to ask your opinion on that, how much it played a role. You're married to a Chinese. How could the investor still say that you're not committed to the market, and how much did this help you or support you to get forward in the fundraising process?
I think it's just part of the process. They need to challenge me, right?
Yeah.
For example, they cannot say you have no clients because I have Harvard, Audi, blah, blah, blah. They cannot say you have no revenue then because I have revenue. So they had to say something. But if, for example, if I were Chinese, they would have said like the poor Chinese startups, also the super motivated pitching. But I remember the investor telling them, oh, very good, very beautiful. But have you get even 1 renminbi revenue? And the guy quiet because he haven't got any client yet. So yeah, so I just was finding something to attack. But one thing that I learned, that's why now it's taking me more time to fundraise for the next round, is if you go with numbers, then the other things are just blah, blah, blah. No matter if I am blue or green, what color, if I am from the Earth or Mars, if I go with something that is growing exponentially, I can tell you the investor, he has to be interested, cannot miss that opportunity. It's part of his job to find this type of startups. So yeah, at the end, it hurts when they say this, but then you realize, oh, that's his job. He needs to challenge me from somewhere. Then you change your mentality. Then it becomes better. If not, I met other entrepreneurs, super in a bad mood. So you have to adapt to this. That's how it is.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing this, Alvaro. I just want to give some perspective on the other way of fundraising, actually, which probably most startups are facing, is when you sit in Europe and you want to get investment in China. So what I can share from my experience working with so many foreign scale startups that want to enter here is that they do not get any VC funding from China if you did not do your homework and if you did not enter in any way here. The only way how you can receive upfront money is if the VC fund is active in your home country, and you can, like Gen Fund, they are also in other parts of the world, they can invest in you in Europe beforehand, and then they can bring you to China. But it's very not likely that you will get investment just because you have the numbers ready in Germany. And in that regard, I want to remind the people about the slide that I showed before. If you enter China, you start from zero. And also investors will assess you from zero. You have no clients, you have no network, you have no knowledge. Why should anybody give you money? So if you want to get to money in China right away, I think the best thing that you can do is look for the VC arms that are both active in your home country and in China. And then you can make a bridge that they help you to come to China. That's the strong muscle that your later stage investors should have, or enter through accelerators. There are some that are focused on this, bringing international startups in here. One, to drop a name, is China Accelerator, backed by SOSV. Brink is also a landing pad for that. NIHAB does that. Those are specialized in seed investing into your Chinese entity. So you usually get around 100 to 150,000 US$ for a certain percentage of your company. The equity is around 7 to 10% of your equity. And those will help you to localize. Those will help you to localize your pitch and introduce them to the investors that actually are keen to invest in foreign startups that want to enter the Chinese market. I do not know many other ways how to do that. What you can do and what works often in Germany or in Europe is if you have a distributor strategy, you can enter China without having a local entity here, but you need to have the numbers ready. So you need to showcase you already have, let's say, 10,000 clients in this B2C product. If you get like another $1 million of investment, you can push that to 100,000 products or something like this. That works, but only in the distribution work. If you want to enter with B2B or B2C directly or an R&D, you need to do your homework first. Nobody will give you give you money up front. And you heard from Alvaro how hard even he had it, even though he's married to a Chinese, speaks Chinese, is in the market, has revenue, has everything. You're challenged every day. So that's very tough to do. There's one question in the Q&A. I want to dive into that a bit later because it's IP related. But Alvaro, let's dive a bit more into your case. Can you share some of the downs that you had? Maybe mistakes you made, hiring, accounting, finance, selling, approaching partners, working with governments, anything that you think is worth sharing, obstacles that you faced on your way?
I think that there are so many incentives or things for entrepreneurs, also for foreigners, that at the beginning I was spending too much time into that. Maybe that's one thing. At the end, now I'm not focused on that. I'm just trying to get money through my business. Then about the team, yeah, my team, well, if there are challenges, I guess it's maybe my lack of leadership, what I need to improve, but I don't think it's because of the nationality. My team is very, very international. So from different countries, I have people in Spain, I have people in China, in Pakistan, in China, in Shanghai, in Beijing, also in Korea. So yeah, I think building a team, that's not a problem. Of course, there are so many firings as well. But again, I don't think people that get fired because of the nationality, just get fired because it doesn't belong to the culture. No, maybe also because of the skills. That is another reason. So yeah, it's not been a big challenge about hiring. Haven't been a challenge actually. And yeah, if we have a big challenge now in the company, maybe it's about the market, because now we started in the Chinese market, but we realize it's much bigger the international market, actually. So now we're getting many clients in Europe and in the US, that people that need live translation for virtual events or virtual events, and also offline, but also with platforms itself. We are integrating, we have integration for platforms, also in live e-commerce as well. They integrate us, so now when somebody's selling a product, they can talk in one language, but they can have subtitles in Bahasa for the Indonesian market. We know the languages. So, and we use human interpreters or AI. So, but that we discover actually thanks to going international. Because one thing that we notice in the market of translation is that Chinese market, we are getting revenue from there, but it's a very potential market that works inside. No, the Chinese companies have to get Chinese customers because it's so huge, the market. And sometimes that's why they are not interested to do streaming in different languages. But when we go overseas, and we get an American company selling glasses, and they're doing live shopping, live e-commerce, their market is not only the US, it is also Israel, Germany, Algeria, Thailand, Vietnam. They want to sell to everyone in the world. So then we realize, hey, there is more potential for us in the international market rather than in the Chinese market. And also this is aligned with our investors as well, because we all want that if for the next round we can get actually US dollars funding, not Chinese renminbi. So if not, we get stick into only the Chinese market. So yeah, the challenges that we have is more business oriented, not related. So I don't know if the audience is interested to see or to listen our challenges for the business, but yeah, that's our situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, also to share from my business in Founders Layer, we are also building a marketplace that connects kind of corporate innovators with startups. And we also realized the same that Alvaro mentioned, that China works within. It's the rest of the world is working cross-border and they want to do things together. And China, most of the business is within. So you need to have a separate solution if you build a platform, either for translation or for matchmaking or marketplaces. You need to develop something for the local market. Also, your tech stack will probably separate at one point if you want to tap into both markets. And that's one question probably for the future, Alvaro. Do you plan to stick around then here in China and build something for the Chinese market? Or do you plan to focus everything on cross-border, getting the US fund in, and then spending your time on rest of the world?
Now seems more priority. So we are getting revenue from China. So we have many clients here, but it's growing what we get out from international market. And I think soon we'll overpass the Chinese revenue that we're getting. Yeah.
Okay, but will you do both from a technical perspective?
Yes, because it's not difficult for us because we have the infrastructure of our solution servers and everything. So it's not difficult to keep our services here at all since we are here. It's just about the new markets that are growing in overseas, at least for us. Asia Pacific as well. Asia Pacific. There are many different languages there, no? Thailand, May from Malaysia, and Bahasa, and all of them try to get markets in live e-commerce for them, also in congresses, get audience there. So these are potential markets that, of course, I'm willing to explore. And it's easy for us, actually, since we're already present in Asia, we realize it's very easy, actually, to get to open those markets. So yeah, we're going into those directions.
Okay. Now I try to shift a bit more to the question that's there. Did you develop any IP strategy, any IP that you registered? Was it a thing for you or not?
Yes. So IP inside China. So inside China, we have first IP for our logo or name. This is one thing. The other thing is for the concept that we are doing. No, that's one of the things that the lawyer suggests us. So in our case, we're doing this remote translation for human interpreters or for AI machine to provide this captioning or voice translated for these events, platforms, and congress. So that concept we apply for an IP, intellectual property, and of course it doesn't mean that. So it basically is a protection in case a competitor suddenly claims, "Hey, this concept that I built, you are copying me, so you cannot do this in this market," then I can show in a very early stage, 2018, I already filed for that. So then nothing can happen. I can, how to say, it's to avoid problems in the future. Yeah, the early state, I filed for that, and that's it. Even if it didn't pass, because sometimes it's a long process, as long as you can see that you file for this system that you have built for an IP or trademark, is already good enough. So that's what we did for Chinese market.
And when did you come up with that idea to do that? What was the trigger for you?
Oh, that was in the incubator, because in the incubator there is this. It was very good. It was every week there are like 10 experts that comes to the incubator, and we entrepreneurs can book their time, just only 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And they are from McKinsey, they are from a law firm, I guess it was one of the law firms that you just sit and then the expert start asking you about her field, no? Like, hey, how are you guys doing about trademark? Of course, we said we have nothing. And then the lady, hey, what about for little amount of money, 200 euros, you can file for this trademark and this and this. Maybe maximum, no, because they know you're a startup. They are coming to the incubator. They know we don't have budget. And then they say, if you do this, you can get protected. Of course, we also check with other startups in the incubator. Have you guys done this? And they say, yeah, we did it. Then we said, let's do it. So it was the incubator who actually, the mentorship program, this one-on-one, helped us a lot.
And having your trademark secured and having this concept secured is a different thing. So when did it become important for you to secure your concept? This because you're also in code, in software, in AI. It's very hard actually to file an IP in that regard. Well, what was the point where someone came to you and said, like, you should do that, and you thought this is the right time to do it? Was it the same time as the trademark, or?
No, it was also because we had a competitor doing the similar exact thing, and they also filed for that. I think the agency that we were using, they said, hey, is this guy your competitors? Yeah, they also have filed for a system like yours. And then we saw, yeah, actually they are our direct competitors. So when we saw they were doing, then we also do that. Then at least they can never say they were like 10 years before us building this system, this solution. Yeah.
And who did tell you that your competitor was doing that? Was that your IP consultant, or?
Yeah, the agency. The agency can check about the concept that you are filing for, can check in the system to see if the companies or these keywords have been actually patented or something. So yeah, they did that.
And last question, and then I will answer myself to that one, is do you think it's important that so that you do this as a startup, or it doesn't matter too much?
I don't think it's important at all, because in the last 5 years, I've met like hundreds of startups, and I think no one failed because IP. If they fail, is because of the business that they have.
Yeah. This also goes in the direction of how I would answer that. In general, IP in most industries does not matter too much. Speed matters, and implementation and growth. So how fast do you learn, and how fast do you improve your product to the client, build something that you want, that people want. That is, of course, not true if you're in the area of healthcare devices, pharmaceuticals, biotech, robotics, certain processes. Then you need to file your IP as early as possible. And you should also do that in China. But if you're in any regard in that field, my advice is usually do not come with your best product to the market. Come with like second or third generation, like down the line, something older model, and bring that to the market. And then you see how the market reacts. Because again, you need to build something unique for the Chinese market. Once you figure that out, then you can start filing that. And in the rest, I also have not seen any startup failing because of IP. It's usually they did not get enough revenue, or they didn't build a product that really was wanted in the market. And that's again linked to speed of learning and speed of access of building. Right. So IP, I wouldn't say is too important. That's, by the way, something that 90% of all the startups that I'm working with all do. They focus too much on these topics of like, I need to protect everything before I go to China, even though it's not really worth it. You have to start from scratch and build something for the Chinese market. So what they always want is, I take what I have and bring it to China. But you have to learn again here from you. So the IP is not so important. I hope that answered the question for Ivy. If it's specifically about IP, you can also again YEO SME Center. They have an IPR help desk, which you can also reach out to and help you with a lot of things. Cool. Alvaro, anything good? So we talked about some flaws, about hiring, about fundraising and stuff, but anything good you want to share about being an entrepreneur in China?
Oh, how to say? Anything? Yeah, like for me, is not. I've never seen it. How to say, a negative thing or a challenge to be a foreigner. It's just you have the right business, you're solving the right problem, you get clients. Sometimes I remember myself, love through my website, through traffic, I get Chinese clients, institutions, government departments, they need our solution. And yeah, and maybe they don't even know we're foreigners. Yeah, sometimes they don't know. They just need to have a problem. They're searching for a solution. They find us and we're here and we provide a solution for them. Of course, there are the challenge that I have is always from business perspectives, from operation perspective, but I wouldn't discourage anyone. I wouldn't encourage anyone. The Chinese market is 1.2 billion people, right? So if you are in a B2C, and it's just do it. But of course, the language is important. That's the only thing. Also, I've met some entrepreneurs that they don't know Chinese at all. It's just they built a good team. No, with the people that know Chinese that can talk for them with them. So I think that also is good. In my case, I'm stubborn, so I learned Chinese myself.
Do you think that you would have been as successful with your startup if you would have started in Europe?
If I would have been less successful or more successful?
No, if you would have been as successful as you're now, if you would have started in Europe. What do you think that, so I know it's a hypothetical question, but what do you think provided you with the right resources and learnings here in China that you would probably not have received in Europe?
Yeah, actually, many people ask me that question, but I don't know, because I started being an entrepreneur in China. So for the last year, I've been here, so I don't know the resources that I can get back in Barcelona, for example. I don't know if there would have been that many startup events like here, or the investors or so willing to listen to you like here. I don't know. I cannot compare.
So you're a real Chinese entrepreneur. That's good. Cool. Is there anything about Akadu that you want to share with the audience about your case of being an entrepreneur that we have not tapped into yet? No.
Alvaro, I just have a question for you, perhaps.
Yes.
You were talking before about how you had to defend your baby, Akadu, in front of potential investors, and how you actually learned not to take it personal, just to say, and to actually just learn how to answer in a way that could please the person who was asking the question, even if it hurt you somehow because it was a way of attacking your baby and you had to defend it. And there was a question you mentioned that at some point you turned the answer around and you were able to even convince the potential investors that investing in a foreign startup was even better than investing in a Chinese one. I am curious, which is actually the argument you used for that reasoning.
Oh, actually, yeah, that's a good one. I learned this from Sequoia. I guess you guys know Sequoia is a big investment firm. And in the US, I read an article from one of the the partners. He was saying that he likes investing in foreigners in the US, foreigners, because the foreigners that go to the US with a business, they have only one goal in their life, just the business. They don't bring family, they don't bring friends, they don't bring ex-girlfriends, just their business. And they are so focused that who wouldn't invest on them? Then I was telling similar thing to here to the Chinese investors. It's like, I just here with one unique goal. It's just my business. And Chinese New Year, when everyone leave, go back to the hometown, I stay here for the business. So I try to just to show them how actually I was all in into this, all in. And yeah, it was a good answer. Of course, I polished it in better like this, but it was into that direction, how I used to tell them that my willingness, or I'm so focused into that more than other Chinese, that maybe I just testing after they graduated. I was not. For me, that was serious.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, it is actually true that at least in most of the cases, the foreigners are known for being hard workers in China. They're the ones that work normally overtime and they really put effort in the job. So yeah, it makes sense, the reasoning you gave them. Thank you.
Sorry, I was just writing in the chat. I think we're in Q&A session. Maybe you can shortly share with the audience what does ACADU stand for?
Oh, thanks for the question. So it's a story. So please, everyone, focus. Around 3,000 years ago, in the Middle East, there was a city called Babylon City. And the citizens were building a tower called the Babel Tower with one unique purpose: to reach heaven. Now, based on the Bible, God was never happy with that idea. So punish all the citizens and makes them talk different languages so they cannot communicate, they cannot finish the tower. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are old stories, but in real life, 3,000 years ago, the language that the people were talking in Babylon City is called Akkadian. Akkadian is a forgotten language. It doesn't exist anymore, but it existed. You can Google it. And one of the words of the Akkadian alphabet is Akadu. Akadu means something coming from Akkadian culture and language. So in honor to that forgotten language, we call ourselves Akadu. And the logo, actually, we took it from the first character from the Akkadian alphabet. The letter A has some triangles, so we took it from there as well. So there is this history behind Akadu name and logo. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, I really love that. By the way, Alvaro and I, we know each other for how many years now? I think 6 years. I used to be still a business consultant, and Alvaro was brave enough to take the step of becoming an entrepreneur. So we knew each other before either of us were entrepreneurs, and I'm super happy that we are still friends after so many years. And he has been successful with that path, and I followed a bit later, and still in this regard. I just see that there is one question in the chat.
Perhaps I can help you get I can
Yeah.
read it for you. Could you share your view on the possibilities of getting Chinese venture capital investment for foreign startups that are not registered in China?
Okay, I mentioned that before, actually.
Sorry.
I answered that. I can just repeat. So in very short, it's very unlikely that that foreign entrepreneurs get Chinese VC money from afar. So the answer that I had was you should focus on those VC firms that have also a branch in your home country and approach them there and get them into your investment portfolio and enter with them the Chinese market. That is what you can do if you have the muscle. The other ways you can do is if you have the numbers in terms of sales through distribution already without having an entity, you can say, hey, with a little bit of more investment, I can increase that. And that's what you can do with foreign investors in your home country, maybe even with Chinese investors, but for that you need good numbers. So again, what Alvaro mentioned in the past before, if you are later round, they only look at the numbers. They do not care where you come from, what you do. If you can show that you're growing by like 5% per week, then they don't care. They will listen to you and see what your business case is, and then they will invest in you. And also in that regard, Chinese are very pragmatic, also in later round.
Yeah, just one comment for this. if any foreign startup or European startup is looking for a Chinese fund and you talk with them, you can just directly ask them if they have US dollars or euros, most probably US dollar. Because if they say, I met some funds that they were asking me, since I was a foreigner, they were asking me, Alvaro, do you want renminbi or US dollars? And at the time I wanted renminbi. So it means the funds that are asking you if you have US dollar, it means they have money outside of China ready to invest. Then it's not complicated. There is one of a structure that you can set up. So you have a branch in China, but the headquarters are outside of China, and then you get the money from the Chinese firm in that branch or that office or company. So it's doable.
But again, what Alvaro mentions here is commitment to the market. So you need to have a certain company structure here in order to get that. So just being sitting in your home country and trying to receive the money to enter through distribution is very unlikely. So you will have to set up a VIE structure, a joint venture, a WUFI. A WUFI itself doesn't make any sense if you have not linked it to anything else. So you should have a certain holding structure that you can receive the money, but this is the minimum commitment that you should have. So without having a company registered in China is very hard. And so if you would ask me if I know any case, I do not know any that work without having an entity here. The only things that work is if you have a distribution B2C that works here and you already sell, then the investors will come and invest into your mother entity. That works, yeah.
Okay,
cool.
I think we reached the end of the time, the available time today. I would like to thank you both, Yelte and Alvaro, for this wonderful cooperation. It's been a nice exchange of professional backgrounds and expertise. I think we gave a very nice overview of the market and the opportunities and experience, do's and don'ts. I would like to thank all the participants also that were available today for this. One just reminder from our side, once you close the system, you will be invited to fill up a survey that will take you 3-4 minutes top. We will encourage you to fill it up because it will help us to understand how you like this webinar, how you like our performance, but also it will help us to define upcoming training opportunities. So thank you in advance for filling it up. I would like also to thank Stenda and the Slovene China Business Forum, and to the participants and to the speakers. See you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.